weren't aware, Donald Trump deliberately held a rally in New York City at Madison Square Garden on Sunday. And when I say deliberately, it's of course because of the fact that people out there are being fed this information that in 1939 in Madison Square Garden, a massive Nazi rally occurred. So naturally, of course, when the media is creating this image of someone into a fascist Nazi and comparing him to Hitler, it makes perfect sense, right, for Donald Trump to book Madison Square Garden right before the fake election, because of course he has no self-awareness, right? Now this is how they work you into a deep hypnosis. They work people into a frenzy. The left and the right, they have created this illusion or this perception of what each side is, right? Republicans have been built up as racist, even if there's black people who are Republican. They've been built up as racist in the mind of the Democrats. Democrats, of course, have been built up in the mind of the Republicans as these completely insane, perverted people. And this really is hypnotism 101. Because, again, if we didn't have the technology that we have now, this wouldn't be working the way that it's working, because people are constantly getting fed media, whether it's controlled alt-right or communist Democrat media. So if you haven't seen, the headlines are things like this: racist rally in New York City, right? And you would think that Donald Trump would say, hey, if we're going to go to Madison Square Garden with all the stuff that's out there, if I'm trying to actually get votes, with all the stuff that's out there about a Nazi rally from the 1930s taking place at Madison Square Garden and the comparisons between me and Hitler, maybe we should tone it down while we're speaking at this rally and not use things like racial undertones or just flat out racial comments, right? Because then people wouldn't probably vote for me. But he knows that this isn't about getting votes. This is about working people into a psychosis. And that's what you're living among now. If you go out into the physical world and you talk to people out there in the physical world, not on the internet, in the physical world, they are getting worked into this hypnosis. I'm sure you've driven by people's homes. They have huge banners, F Biden or Donald Trump MAGA flag. I mean, these people literally think that they're a part of something, that they're a part of a movement. This is nothing more than a massive mind control experiment that's being done, and it's working. And we're all seeing it work around us, which is why, again, they want people like us silenced, because we have the ability. And I say we because I say everybody out there who thinks the way that I think on this channel, which is that the left and right is completely controlled. That is a narrative that they don't want out there and they won't allow to be out there. So you would think that Donald Trump would tell everybody, hey, we got to be extra careful about what we talk about here, because the media is using the talking point of the 1930s Madison Square Garden Nazi rally, which of course you're only finding out about a 1930s Nazi rally because they want you to find out about it, because they put that stuff out there so that Democrats start comparing this rally to that one. And then, of course, conservatives say, well, we're not really racist, until you actually listen to some of the stupid speeches that are given and how they're working people up into a frenzy, and even bring Hulk Hogan again out from his coffin wherever he's been hiding. All of a sudden, Hulk Hogan is getting run out with the Republicans because they're trying to use this white nationalist, pro-America type of mindset here. People don't realize how bad they're being messed with. I mean, that's really what's going on here, is they're just messing with people to the umpteenth degree. Like, we didn't think that any of their mind control experiments could get this insane, but it is. And remember, before I play for you the clips from this rally, which of course, you have people talking about Puerto Rico and little gestures. You have a guy waving a crucifix up in the air, saying all sorts of insane things and saying all sorts of things to just work people into hysteria, calling Kamala Harris the Antichrist, the devil herself. Hulk Hogan going on stage talking about how he doesn't see any Nazis around him. I mean, they want these talking points out there because this is how basic mind control works. And the more they keep doing this stuff, whether it's real or not, whether you see conservatives who are really Nazis or not, they're literally creating this illusion in people's mind through the mind control. And the Republicans are playing into it too, because they're out there and they're doing stuff like I'm about to show you. And anybody who sees this would say, yeah, it's a little out there. It's just very cringy, to say the very least. And remember about mind control before I show you this, because I know the conservatives out there don't want to give credit to the actual CIA or to the actual government when it comes to mind control experiments, because they want to believe that they're actually awake. They mastered mind control so well that we all need to pay deeper attention to Operation Mockingbird, to MK Ultra, to all the mind control experiments that they've done throughout the last 100 years or so, because they've mastered it. And they've mastered it so well that when you look at the conservatives, you should sit there and you should say, wow, this is how well they've mastered it. Then you look at the Democrats and say, wow, this is how well they've mastered it. They've convinced a side through basic repetition and mind control that kids should be castrating themselves. Then on the other side, they've taken conservatives and they've convinced them that the deep state is real, which it is, which we've all always been yelling about, but not really called the deep state necessarily. They've created this illusion, right? This perception of who it is and who's responsible. Again, these people still believe they know what's going on and that they can vote and change what's going on. And they don't realize that they're deep in the hypnosis as well. Here are some of the things that were said at Trump's Madison Square Garden, quote unquote, Nazi rally.
Won't show my story or won't back Donald Trump. I love you, Donald. God bless America and God bless the United States of America. USA, 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 USA. Criminal migrants are gone. The gangs are gone. America is for Americans and Americans only. Trump maniacs, I don't see no stinking Nazis in here. I don't see no stinking domestic terrorists in here. The only thing I see in here are a bunch of hard-working men and women that are real Americans, brother.
There's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah, I think it's called Puerto Rico.
She is some sick that Hillary Clinton, huh? What a sick son of a... The whole party, a bunch of degenerates. Can you imagine Kamala Harris performing a random, kind, generous act? She is the devil, whoever screamed that out. She is the Antichrist. Her and her pimp handlers will destroy our country. We need to slaughter this other people.
They're smart and they're vicious, and we have to defeat them. And when I say the enemy from within, the other side goes crazy. They are indeed the enemy from within. And
so if you were running a presidential campaign, now I'm not running any campaign at all, but I would think even if I was running a campaign in my town, in my school, say I was running for school president, class president, wouldn't you think if all of these perceptions were out there and comparisons to Hitler and the comparisons to Nazis and white supremacy, that the first thing you would do on the checklist is probably after they start talking about 1939 Madison Square Garden Nazi rallies, not go there. Secondly, even if you were going to go and you're going to say, fine, who cares what they say, we're still going to go. Wouldn't you go out of your way to check all the things that people are talking about? How many people on stage mentioned racial, talking about the border and how we're going to throw you out? How about the one guy? The guy said we need to slaughter these other people. I mean, at what point are people on the left or the right going to start realizing that they're getting worked? Like, this is like being in a relationship with a psychopath. Okay, your political
Hello, Moto.
affiliation is what's causing you all this stress, all this anxiety. They're deliberately manipulating you. These people are in bed with each other. And this is more proof of that. Because anybody would have listened to the stuff. Look, what do you think? They show up at these rallies like this one at Madison Square Garden and they weren't checking the script for what they were going to say? I mean, really? Like, if you were going to read something at your high school on on the microphone at your high school, they would want to know what you're going to say. They wouldn't give you a hot mic at one of these rallies, especially with the tensions and the civil unrest that they're deliberately creating. They know what these people are going to say, and they continue to work them. And then they scream stuff like slaughtering the opposition, which literally, you might hear that and think, well, he's talking about Kamala Harris. But people hear that, and they think in their minds that they're talking about them because they're so affiliated with the political party. So they're thinking that this guy is speaking at this rally a week before the fake election, and that he's calling on the people of the conservative party to slaughter the other side. And these are just little things that they do, little words that they use, little ways that they speak. And they start convincing these people of this stuff, and it's worked. It's worked because you see how each side looks at each other. And unfortunately for people like us, like I've mentioned a lot recently, we get lumped in with the conservative side because they have lunatics on stage holding up a crucifix and then throwing out words like Antichrist. So anybody who stumbles upon my channel who doesn't know my content or never heard me before, they'll immediately just stereotype me into MAGA. They'll be like, oh, he's a conservative. He's a Christian. Oh, he's a conservative. Oh, he's talking conspiracy. Oh, he's a conservative. This is all deliberately being done. Like this stereotype mind control has been around for a while. I always think back to like The Breakfast Club, right? There was like, oh, what a great movie. They were building stereotypes. Here's the jock, here's the nerd, here's the princess, right? Here's the dropout. They build stereotypes. And now they're doing this with political affiliation. It never was like this. People, who are younger don't realize it was never like this. You can identify a Democrat based on their glasses or how they dress, and you could do the same with the MAGA side. They're formulating and manufacturing human beings. That's what we're seeing going on. This right here is social engineering 101. So you hear all the lunatic talk, you hear people screaming about, yeah, they're destroying the country, but guess what? Both sides are destroying the country together. And that's what's really hilarious about it is when you hear Donald Trump, he talks about how we have to defeat them. Because again, when you're in this entrenched in the left right, you look at it as if you're on a football team, you're on a basketball team. You look at it as if you're in a war with another country. This is what they're creating, right? This is all being manufactured. And Donald Trump said we have to defeat them. And them, of course, in people's mind isn't we have to defeat Kamala Harris. We have to defeat people who vote for Kamala Harris. We have to defeat people who have the Kamala Harris flags in their front lawn. They're creating a civil war because it's the oldest motto in the book, divide and conquer. If you're trying to bring America to its knees, you would need some type of a civil war, whether it ends up in bloodshed or it just ends up where they start herding people around to left and right states, blue and red states, is yet to be determined. But when Donald Trump talks about defeating the enemy, I think it's incredible that a week ago, he was at a dinner with these people like Chuck Schumer sitting by him, side by side, talking to him. Now, he's talking about defeating the enemy. What's he saying? Oh, defeat him at the ballot box.
Hello, Moto.
They know that they could just say that. But then when you listen to their words and read between the lines and see how they act, they are doing deeper psychosis, much deeper psychosis on people than people give them credit for. Because most people don't want to look at themselves as being sucked into this thing. But Trump was just having dinner at that gala with all Democrats, people who have tried to throw him in jail, people who said that he's a criminal, that he's the next Hitler, and he's eating with them. Would you be eating with them? Would you be standing there with them? Would you be associating with them if you're speaking the way that the Republican Party speaks? Of course not. So the other thing to note as I talk about behavioral control is what actually occurred while this was airing on television. What occurred was that during his speech, they literally were cutting off his speech and fact-checking it. Now, people are going to see this at first, and they're going to say, well, this is utterly insane. But this is going to be the new normal. Because the more they start doing this through repetition, people are just going to become desensitized, and they're going to expect it. Kind of like underneath every video that I do, for the most part, there's a blue fact-check box. Now, everybody who's listening to my channel, obviously, all of us look at it. I know a lot of you say it's a badge of honor. It's comical. It's comical to think that somebody would watch one of our videos and then click the fact check, but they know how this mind control works. So if somebody is completely asleep and they're hearing about weather modification for the first time, of course their brain is going to be like, whoa, what? They've never even thought of the notion of the government having the ability to modify the weather because it's never been taught to them in school. They haven't been, all they've heard are all these words and phrases like you can't control Mother Nature. So then they hear, they're like, wait a minute, this guy's saying they can actually do it. Let me listen a little bit. Oh, wait, here's the fact check box. And then boom, they get nailed with the real disinformation. So then they're automatically more likely to just dismiss what I'm saying because it's a lot to wrap your head around. Well, now, even though we know that the right is fully controlled, they're conditioning you into this new reality where they bring the Ministry of Truth on. Remember the Ministry of Truth narrative, the 1984 narrative, where they were hiring people in Biden's administration who were going to fact check people, and then, we're not really doing that. They're just quietly doing it. They're quietly doing it with how they're implementing it on YouTube. They're quietly doing it with how they're just popping up fact checks in the middle of this rally. CNN literally goes to fact check. Now, conservatives see this and they're like, oh man, that's out of control, ridiculous. But eventually, just like I talked about very early on in talking about all these topics, eventually the conservatives are going to call on Democrats to be fact-checked. Just like conservatives called on Democrats to be canceled after a while. Instead of saying, you know what, you're not allowed to cancel me, I'm not going to be canceled. They just accept being canceled. They left YouTube and went to Rumble. They listened to what they were told. They just went along with it, pretending like they were rebelling against it, and then calling on censorship for the other side. And that's how this works. You cancel each other out. But for those of you that don't know, here's a little clip from 1984 about the dystopian hell that they're trying to create, where literally everything is going to be monitored, tracked, and of course, everything's going to be fact-checked.
The saboteurs, Lewis and Siegel, were caught a few minutes ago in the neighborhood of Victory Square and have already confessed their guilt. As he was arrested, Lewis was heard to shout in a loud voice, "Long live Big Brother!" 6748 Smith W. Regulation 6040. Outer party members will always wear identification badges when going in public places. Who are you? 6748 Smith W. Where do you work? In the Ministry of Truth. Which department? The Records Department. What is your business in the people's area? I had a headache. I thought if I got a little air. When did you leave work? 1800 hours. It's now 2200. Report tomorrow morning at 800 hours to both administration. What do you do, Smith? I revise history. That's an unfortunate way of putting it. What you actually do is to rectify speeches and wrongly reported incidents, isn't it? Yes.
So that's 1984, and now we're in 2024, and this is what appears in the middle of a Trump rally. They start fact-checking everything coming out of his mouth. Now, again, some people will look at it, they'll laugh, they'll be like, oh, that's not going to happen. And then when it starts happening over and over and over again, and it becomes more normal, like every other show, they start fact-checking things, then it just becomes your new reality. That's how this whole thing works. They just ease you into this stuff with no pushback. They go forward. They don't let you push back even if you try to, but there's too many people sucked into the left, right. So instead of pushing back, they're just going to call on Democrats being fact-checked, and then we're going to have to accept this as our new reality. Look at this.
A rally from Madison Square Garden with former President Donald Trump, where we are hearing scores of lies from the former president. He has come on stage and said a number of things that are just not true, starting with a number of things on immigration. He repeated his lies that there was no relief money for victims of the hurricanes in North Carolina and Florida and other states, because he claims that the government gave it all to migrants and that there was none left. That is patently untrue. FEMA had to set up a website to debunk that, and some people have not gone and gotten help that they needed because of those lies. He also repeated another lie that in Springfield, that thousands of immigrants were dumped in Springfield, Missouri illegally. In fact, the city website says that Haitian immigrants are there legally under the Immigration Parole Program, and that they independently chose to move there. They were not sent by any program. Again, we have heard number of lies. He also started talking about the fact that he thinks Kamala Harris would put a draft in place. It's worth noting there is no active draft in place. He has also talked about the economy, when a number of economists have pointed out that the tariffs that Trump continues to talk about and want to put into place would harm the American economy and truly harm American consumers, who would see the prices of goods go up, and that there are real concerns about what those economic policies could lead to.
So again, the more they start doing stuff like this, repetition is the key. It's as simple as that. You don't need to study a human brain to understand that repetition is the key to mind control. You know why? You know how? In the easiest terms, how do you learn to tie a shoe, right? The first time you tie a shoe, I bet it's not the easiest thing that you've ever done in the world, right? But guess what? I bet the last time you tied your shoe, you don't even remember tying it. Why? Because of the repetition, right? It just becomes second nature. It becomes normal. Well, the way to do that is to just continually do it over and over again. And what they do is they start easing these things like fact-checking into our day-to-day lives, just like words like misinformation. How many people do you hear repeat the word misinformation and disinformation? 3-4 years ago, when they first said it, we were all laughing at the fact that they were even using terminology like that, because we were saying, well, how do you define it? How do you define disinformation or misinformation? Who's the source? Let's ask those questions. Well, we're telling you. Oh, well, that's not a source to us. right? Oh, science is a source, they tell.
Hello, Moto.